How many times has somebody said to you, "You're too young. You can't do that. You're too young. You can't play that game. You're too young. You can't go to that club. You are too young. You can't do that sport. You're too young." I'm going to share one of my favourite Bible verses with you today. In fact, it's not actually a whole verse, it's half a verse. And it's the first half of the first letter to Timothy, chapter 4 and verse 12. It's a verse that I give to people a lot because it says this: "Don't let anyone think less of you because you're young." 1 and 2 Timothy are letters written by Paul to Timothy, who he was training as a church leader. In this passage, Paul is reminding Timothy that even though he's still young, he still has a really important job to do for God. Paul says, "Teach these things and insist that everyone learn them. Don't let anyone think any less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity." Even though Timothy was still young, God still had a purpose for his life right then. He didn't have to wait until he'd grown up or got older. God wanted him to be serving him already, right at that moment in his life. And there's other people all through the Bible that God uses when they're young. David was young when he beat Goliath. Samuel was young when he prophesied to Eli. Jesus was young when he started teaching in the temple. It doesn't matter how young you are, God still has a purpose for your life. You might think, "I'm too young to be any use to God," but the Bible tells us otherwise. Or maybe you're at the other end of the spectrum. Maybe you're beginning to think, "Am I too old to be able to do anything useful for God anymore?" But Abraham was 75 years old when God called him to leave home and follow him. Moses was 80 years old when God spoke to him from the burning bush. And Noah was 600 years old when God asked him to build an ark. If God can use Noah when he's 600, then I really don't think there's anybody listening to this right now that's too old to serve God. Because in reality, it doesn't matter how old you are, and it doesn't matter how young you are. God still has a purpose for your life right now. You might think that you've got nothing to give him, but God still has things for you to do. He's got people for you to love, and he's got people for you to serve. No one is too young, and no one is too old to be part of God's plan.